So I want you to picture this. It's a soaking wet kitten. She's shivering, and she's wearing this tiny yellow duck motif bathrobe.
Oh, yeah, complete with the little towel wrapped around her head.
Right, twisted into a knot with a fuzzy pom-pom on top. It sounds, exactly like a viral internet meme designed to completely distract you on a Tuesday afternoon.
It really does.
Yeah.
But the crazy part is that this specific, absurdly wholesome image actually sparked a massive research project.
Exactly, a project combining fluid dynamics, neuroscience, and artificial intelligence, all to decode the literal mathematical language of cats.
It is honestly one of the most unexpected trajectories I've ever seen in a stack of source documents.
Right.
Because you have this human who is referred to in the research logs as the logic unit, and they collaborated with an AI agent.
And initially, they just set out to write a catchy, hyperpop jingle about this wet kitty.
Right, just a fun song, but then the project completely mutated. They realized they couldn't just, have the cat in the song make generic animal noises. They wanted to translate human words into factual, species-accurate feline bioacoustics.
And they actually called this resulting language Catonese, which is just brilliant.
It is.
And our mission for this deep dive is to take you on that exact journey. We are starting with that shivering wet kitten, and we're going all the way down to the mathematical formulas that dictate exactly how a cat's purr physically heals its own bones.
We're getting into the absolute granular details of wet kitty and Catonese.
Yes, we are. And I promise you, by the end of this, you will never hear a cat's meow, hiss, or purr the same way again.
You really won't.
Yeah.
You'll start to realize that the little creature sitting on your couch isn't just making arbitrary sounds to get your attention.
No, they're deploying highly evolved, neurologically targeted acoustic tools.
Exactly. But, before we can translate a pop song into this scientifically grounded Catonese, we have to establish what a cat's vocal repertoire actually is.
Right, and the sources make it very clear that to do this, we have to aggressively strip away all of our human assumptions.
That is the foundational hurdle right there. Because humans carry this immense cognitive bias when it comes to pets.
We anthropomorphize everything.
We do. If a cat meows, we just assume it translates perfectly to hello or maybe I am hungry. We basically map their biology directly onto human syntax.
Which is completely wrong.
Right. So to build true Catonese, the researchers had to abandon that completely and look at the raw, unfiltered biological blueprint.
And to do that, they relied on a study that used something called an unsupervised fuzzy clustering algorithm.
Yes.
Okay, so unsupervised fuzzy clustering sounds to me like a euphemism for a teenager's messy bedroom.
That is a great way to put it.
So break down the mechanics of that for us. How does a computer algorithm actually listen to a cat without any human bias?
Well, the term unsupervised in machine learning basically means the programmers didn't give the computer an answer key. They didn't pre-label a sound file and say, hey, this is an angry hiss and this one is a happy purr.
Because that would be inserting human bias right from the start.
Exactly. Instead, they took a dataset of 212 distinct domestic cat vocalizations, specifically Felis catus, and they fed the raw audio into the algorithm.
Just the raw files.
Yeah, and the computer was then tasked with finding its own patterns based on 10 highly specific acoustic parameters.
Like what kind of parameters?
Things like frequency ranges, duration, amplitude modulations, just pure physics.
So the math is literally just grouping sounds based on physical shape and energy, not on what a human thinks the sound means.
Precisely. And the fuzzy clustering part is actually crucial here.
Why is it fuzzy?
Because in traditional computing, things are binary. A sound is either entirely in category A or it's in category B. But biological sounds exist on a gradient.
Oh, right. Animals don't speak in perfect binary code.
Right. So an algorithm using fuzzy clustering allows for overlap. It understands that a particular sound might be, say, 70% a meow and 30% a yowl.
It respects the natural spectrum of animal communication.
Exactly.
So when the algorithm finally crunched those 212 vocalizations, what did it actually spit out? Like, what is the alphabet of a domestic cat?
The algorithm identified 4 distinct recurring acoustic categories.
Okay.
You have tonal meows, chirps, noisy meows, and then shrieks or trills.
So those 4 are the biological bedrock of Catonese.
Yes. But the researchers didn't just stop at categorizing them. They looked at the evolutionary function of these sounds.
And this is where the data gets deeply counterintuitive, especially when we compare the classic meow to the purr.
It really does.
because this part of the source material completely upended how I view my own cat. I mean, we think of the meow as the signature cat sound.
It's their brand.
Right, but evolutionarily speaking, the meow and the purr serve vastly different, almost completely opposed purposes.
They do. The research demonstrates that meows are highly context-dependent signals. And crucially, they are overwhelmingly directed at humans.
Wait, so they don't meow at each other?
Adult cats rarely meow at each other in the wild. It's a vocalization they've specifically tailored for us.
Wow.
And because of that, the primary evolutionary requirement of the meow is flexibility.
That makes sense.
A cat needs to be able to manipulate human attention in a dozen different contexts. Getting a door opened, begging for a treat, complaining about a dirty litter box.
So the meow is essentially a multi-tool for human manipulation.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But that flexibility comes with a biological trade-off.
Okay, what kind of trade-off?
Because the meow is constantly shifting in pitch and tone to fit all these different situations, it's not actually a great identifier of the individual cat.
Oh, fascinating.
Right. The purr, however, operates on a completely different biological paradigm. The purr is an ancient, stereotyped, low-frequency sound.
And it's produced mostly in friendly or comforting contexts, right?
Mostly, yes. And the numbers back this up in a way that feels almost backward if you think about it.
Yeah, the sources state that purrs have a massive 84.6% classification accuracy for individual identity.
Which is huge.
And they carry 4.47 bits of information content. But meows, the sound we associate most with our cats talking to us, only have a 63.2% accuracy for individual identity.
Exactly.
And they carry just 2.65 bits of information.
It's a staggering difference in data density.
See, I really want to challenge the logic of domestication here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because if we bred cats, or, they evolved alongside us specifically to talk to humans using the meow, wouldn't evolution have made the meow more unique?
You would think so.
Right. Shouldn't my cat's meow be a distinct, unmistakable signature tailored just for my ears, rather than this sort of generic, low-information sound?
I completely see why you'd think that, but evolution prioritized utility over identity here.
Okay.
If a meow is too rigid as an identity cue, it actually loses its ability to serve all those different functions.
Ah, I see.
And the sources cite a fascinating comparison to prove this. Researchers looked at the vocalizations of the domestic cat's wild relatives.
Like the African wildcat.
Yeah, the African wildcat, the cheetah, the cougar. And they found that domestication gave Felis catus significantly greater acoustic dispersion.
Acoustic dispersion meaning they just have a wider range of noises they can make.
Basically, vocal plasticity, yes. If you are a wildcat, your vocalizations are very rigid.
Oh.
Threat sounds like a threat. A mating call sounds like a mating call.
There's no nuance needed.
Right. But a domestic cat has to navigate a highly complex, human-dominated environment. They need to express really subtle variations of need or annoyance or demand.
So to achieve that range, the sound has to be dispersed and flexible.
Exactly, which inherently makes it less rigidly unique to the individual.
Wow.
So think of the purr as the cat's fingerprint.
Mm-hmm.
It is who they are. The meow is their toolbox. It is what they want you to do.
The purr is who they are, the meow is what they want. I love that. And that distinction is exactly why the AI and the logic unit couldn't just invent random sounds for the wet kitty song.
Right, they had to be accurate.
If they want to translate a human narrative into Catonese, they have to navigate the fact that meows are inherently manipulative and flexible.
Which brings us to a rather humbling reality for anyone who owns a pet.
Yes, it does. Because if meows are so flexible, the next logical question is, how well do humans actually understand them?
And the short answer is, we really don't.
We just think we do.
We do. And to prove it, the sources dive into this profoundly illuminating experiment called the Cat Meows dataset.
This is the Maine Coon study, and I love the methodology here because it is so incredibly rigorous.
The rigor is exactly what makes the results undeniable. The researchers knew they needed to isolate the vocalizations from any visual or environmental clues.
Right?
So they selected 10 Maine Coon cats. And by using a single breed, they standardized a lot of the anatomical variables.
That makes sense.
Plus, these cats all lived in similar environments.
Mm-hmm.
And then they outfitted them with small Bluetooth microphones right on their collars.
Just to capture pure close proximity audio?
Exactly. They completely removed the chaos of different recording devices or ambient room echoes.
So they have these perfect recordings. What did they do next?
They recorded these Maine Coons in 3 highly controlled, everyday contexts.
Okay, what were they?
Context 1 was waiting for food. Context 2 was isolation, which basically meant placing the cat alone in an unfamiliar room for 5
Oh,
minutes.
poor cutie.
I know. And context 3 was being brushed by their owner.
So three incredibly distinct emotional states. You have anticipation, anxiety, and pleasure.
Yes. And they took these isolated audio clips. Just the meows, mind you. No purrs, no hisses, no visuals of the food bowl or the brush.
Just the raw sound.
Right. And they played them to 237 human listeners. And the task was super simple. Listen to the sound and tell us which of the three contexts the cat was in.
It sounds easy. I mean, think about the last time you locked your cat out of the bedroom and they meowed at the door. You probably thought you knew exactly what that specific whine meant.
Oh, people assign whole sentences to it?
We totally do. But the results of this Maine Coon study suggest you are completely projecting.
Absolutely.
The 237 human listeners were largely unable to accurately classify the contexts above random chance.
They failed spectacularly.
The highest recognition rate was for waiting for food, and even that was only recognized 40.44% of the time.
Not even half.
And the worst was isolation. The distressed, anxious meow, which humans only guessed correctly 26.67% of the time.
We are essentially just flipping a coin and pretending it's a conversation.
It completely shatters the illusion of interspecies fluency.
It does. When the visual context is hidden from us, we completely fail to extract specific situational meaning from the acoustic signal alone.
So all our folk categories saying, oh, that's his hungry meow versus that's his angry meow, they don't actually map onto biological reality.
Not in a reliable way, no.
So if our accuracy is hovering around 26 to 40%, what are humans actually parsing when we listen to a cat? Because we must be picking up on something, right?
We are. What humans are actually decent at identifying is emotional valence.
Meaning positivity versus negativity.
Exactly. We could
Right.
detect that. The researchers found that human perception is heavily tied to pitch contours, specifically what they call the fundamental frequency, or F0.
Okay, so the melody of the meow.
Right. We perceive rising pitch contours as positive or expectant. So the meows recorded during brushing or waiting for food, which tend to have the rising melody, were more frequently grouped together as positive.
And falling pitch contours.
We perceive those as negative or stressed, like the isolation meows.
It's basically like being dropped into a country where you don't speak a single word of the language. You have zero vocabulary.
Right.
But if someone walks up to you, you can still guess if they are asking you a question, giving you a compliment, or yelling at you to get out of the way, purely based on the melody, the pitch, and the speed of their voice.
That's a highly accurate way to frame it. You feel the intention, even if the actual translation is a total mystery.
We are tracking the prosody, the musicality of the vocalization, rather than any kind of syntax.
Exactly. And there's a fascinating psychological wrinkle to this study, Kate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they tested the listeners for empathy to see if, quote-unquote, animal lovers were better at this.
Well, that makes sense to test.
And they found that a high score on the General Animal Empathy Scale, the AES, did absolutely nothing to improve recognition rates.
Wait, seriously? So someone who volunteers at an animal shelter or just deeply loves animals isn't inherently better at understanding a cat's meow?
Not at all. Broad affection for animals doesn't magically grant you acoustic decoding skills.
Wow.
However, scores on a very specific metric, the Cat Empathy Scale, or CES, did correlate with better recognition, as did simply being a current cat owner.
So understanding feline communication isn't about general empathy.
No?
It requires a highly specific, tuned, emotional, and experiential investment in the nuances of that exact species.
Yes. And since humans are basically just guessing when it comes to the actual context of a meow, the AI and the logic unit building Catonese couldn't rely on our subjective interpretations at all.
Right. They couldn't just ask a human, what should a wet kitty sound like?
They had to ignore us entirely and look for hard, measurable biological data to build the grammar of this language.
And that leads them directly to the neuroacoustic parameters. Because if human translation is flawed, Catonese must rely on strict mathematical markers.
Exactly.
They have to map the wet kitty's physical state to things like fundamental frequency contours and roughness, bypassing human guesswork entirely.
Let's dive right into that grammar.
Let's do it. So we have our little wet kitten. She has just been dunked into the bathtub, and she is reacting to the splashing water.
Right, a very stressful environment.
Very. And the AI has to translate this trauma into biological data. The sources outline 3 core physiological metrics that make up the vocabulary of Catonese.
The first, as we briefly touched on, is the pitch contour, or F0. This is the structural melody of the sound.
Okay, melody?
Second is the roughness index, which is denoted as R in the equations. Roughness basically measures rapid amplitude variations.
Give me a real-world equivalent for roughness. Like, what does high roughness actually sound like to a human ear?
Okay, think of a smooth, continuous note played on a flute. That is low roughness.
Nice and clean.
Now imagine taking a piece of really coarse sandpaper and dragging it right across a microphone.
Ouch, okay.
That harsh, dissonant grating quality where the sound wave is jagged and rapidly fluctuating in volume, that is high roughness.
Got it. And the third metric?
The third is tristimulus, labeled T1 through T3. This controls formant purity, essentially dictating the timbre.
So that determines whether a vocalization sounds like a clean, soft meow or a raspy, guttural shriek.
Precisely. And these three acoustic features aren't just random choices by the AI.
No, the sources link them directly to the cat's autonomic nervous system.
They do. Specifically, they use a metric called parasympathetic tone activity, or PTAI.
Let's make sure everyone is on the same page with the nervous system real quick.
Yep.
The autonomic system essentially has two gears, right?
Correct. You have the sympathetic nervous system, which is your classic fight-or-flight panic mode.
Heart rate goes up, adrenaline spikes, digestion stops.
Exactly. And then you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest mode. Calm, healing, homeostasis.
And the researchers mapped the acoustic roughness directly to these nervous system states.
Yes.
So high roughness in a vocalization correlates with a low PTA score, specifically anything less than 50.
Which indicates the sympathetic nervous system is dominating.
Right, the cat is experiencing stress, cold discomfort, pain, absolute panic.
Whereas low roughness correlates with a high PTA score greater than 50.
Indicating parasympathetic dominance. The cat feels comfort, warmth, and safety.
So when our wet kitty first hits the bathwater,
Yeah.
it is the ultimate sympathetic trigger.
High roughness, low PTA, falling F0.
Exactly. But to truly understand why the cat makes the specific sound it does in that exact moment, the sources go way beyond just physical stress.
They drill down into the actual neurological encoding layer of the brain.
Yes, they cite a study on feline auditory nerve fibers. And honestly, this is where Catonese transcends being a mere language and becomes this incredible exercise in applied neuroengineering.
This part is so wild. The study looked at how auditory nerve fibers in anesthetized cats respond to tones when they are embedded in continuous broadband noise.
And broadband noise is exactly what splashing bathwater or a running faucet is.
It's just a chaotic wall of sound covering a huge range of frequencies.
Right. When you turn on a faucet, you aren't producing a single clean musical note. You're producing a mess of acoustic energy.
And the research categorized the cat's auditory nerve fibers based on their spontaneous firing rates.
They grouped them into low, medium, and high spontaneous rate fibers. And what the data showed was that in chaotic high-noise environments like a bathtub, the high spontaneous rate fibers quickly get saturated.
They just max out. They are firing so fast, trying to process all that running water, that they can't process any new incoming information.
They become completely deaf to nuance, yes. So, if a cat wants to be heard over the roar of that water, it cannot use a soft tonal meow.
That sound would just get lost in the saturated neural channel.
Exactly. To pierce the noise, the acoustic signal must specifically force the low and medium spontaneous rate fibers to fire.
And how on earth does a cat accomplish that biological hack?
By deploying a high transient, high roughness shriek, a sharp, sudden, jagged burst of acoustic energy.
Wait, let me stop you because I want to make sure I'm not misinterpreting this. Are you saying that when a cat screams in the bathtub, it isn't just an involuntary emotional reaction?
Well, it's not conscious.
Right, but it isn't just them crying because they are scared. Are you telling me that a feline hiss or shriek is an acoustic weapon specifically evolved to cut through the exact frequency of splashing water and force its way into the listener's brain?
I mean, I wouldn't frame it as a malicious weapon so much as an evolutionary emergency bypass system.
Okay.
It's not a calculated thought, obviously, but evolution has optimized that specific sound to guarantee detection by the mammalian nervous system.
Wow.
It intentionally bypasses the saturated neural channels and triggers an immediate visceral alarm response in anyone listening, be it another cat or a human trying to give it a bath.
It is literal biological hacking. They are weaponizing their vocal cords to bypass the traffic jam in our auditory nerves.
It is brilliant survival engineering, and the researchers actually followed this signal further up the neurological chain.
Into the brain.
Yes, looking at how it is processed in the primary auditory cortex, known as A1, of alert cats.
Okay.
They identified different types of cortical cells that handle different parts of the sound. Phasic cells have rapid onset and offset firing. They're designed to process sudden shocks.
So the initial splash of water, the sharp shriek, phasic cells handle that.
Yes, but then you have phasic tonic cells.
Right, and what do those do?
Phasic tonic cells adapt to dynamic transitions. So think of the feeling of the water finally turning off, the cat being lifted out, and the heavy damp towel being wrapped around them.
Ah, that transition from panic to containment is processed by these adaptive cells.
Exactly. And this incredible neural architecture dictates the AI's translation. When the AI translates the bathtub shock in the song, it doesn't output a generic meow.
It generates the phonetic token shriek. Grr.
Yes, it has a falling F0, high roughness, and it is mathematically designed to trigger those phasic cells.
But the biology also has a sweet spot for when the chaos ends, doesn't it? The 1 kilohertz phase locking region.
It does. Once the broadband noise of the water is removed, the acoustic strategy changes completely. Feline auditory nerve fibers exhibit incredibly strong phase locking to frequencies right around 1 kilohertz.
Phase locking meaning the firing of the brain cells perfectly matches the physical wave of the sound.
Precisely. It is an acoustic sweet spot where the temporal encoding of the pitch is perfectly synchronized with the neural firing rate.
So it's super efficient. Yeah.
Very. It requires very little energy to process, and the fidelity is perfect. So later in the wet kitty narrative, when the cat is out of the water, dried off, and posing in her robe, she doesn't need to pierce through noise anymore.
So the Catonese translation shifts to a clear modal meow centered exactly on this 1 kilohertz band.
It's like the cat switches from broadcasting a harsh emergency siren to playing a perfectly tuned acoustic guitar, simply based on what her brain knows will resonate most efficiently in that quiet environment.
That is just, it's mind-blowing. The transition from the bathtub shock to the 1 kilohertz meow represents a complete shift in biological priority.
It really does.
And that actually transitions us into what might be the most fascinating segment of the entire Catonese project.
Oh, the healing mechanics.
Yes, the healing mechanics of the duck motif bathrobe. This completely blew my mind because, you know, in a meme, a bathrobe is just cute. It's a visual gag.
Right.
But in the biophysics of Catonese, the bathrobe is a crucial thermal boundary. And inside that boundary, the cat deploys the purr.
Let's talk about the biological function of the purr, because it goes so far beyond a cat just being happy.
Please do.
The purr is perhaps one of the most misunderstood biological mechanisms in domestic animals. The sources detail extensive bioacoustic research analyzing the purr frequencies of various felids.
So not just domestic cats.
No, they looked at servals, ocelots, pumas. And across all these species, separated by millions of years of evolution, the data is remarkably consistent.
What do they find?
These animals all produce strong, fundamental purr frequencies at exactly 25 hertz, 50 hertz, and 100 hertz.
See, those are incredibly specific, mathematically neat numbers for nature to just stumble upon. Why do those exact frequencies matter?
Because they aren't random. Those exact frequencies happen to have immense, documented medical implications for mammalian physiology.
Seriously?
Yes. Research has shown that applying vibrations at 25 hertz and 50 hertz to the body is therapeutically optimal for promoting bone density.
Oh.
It stimulates fracture healing and aids in general tissue recovery.
Wait. Are you saying that a purr is basically a localized biological ultrasound machine?
That is a highly accurate comparison, yes. It is an internal vibration mechanism evolved purely for self-repair.
That is insane.
And furthermore, the 100 hertz frequency acts as a harmonic that provides significant pain relief and reduces edema, which is swelling, and dyspnea, which is shortness of breath.
So when a cat gets injured or severely stressed, like, say, surviving a freezing cold bath, they turn on this sub-bass frequency to literally vibrate their cellular structure back to health.
Yes, they do. And if we connect this back to the A1 cortical processing we discussed earlier, the purr activates what are called tonic cells in the brain.
Remind me what those do again?
Unlike the phasic cells that fire rapidly during a shock, tonic cells have a long latency and produce sustained, non-interrupting firing.
So it's a steady signal.
Exactly. It's a steady, continuous neural hum. This hum reinforces a state of deep parasympathetic calm, slowing the heart rate and allowing the physical vibrations to do their restorative work.
Okay, let me try an analogy here to see if I have the mechanics right.
Go for it.
Picture a science fiction movie. The Space Marine has just survived a brutal, freezing battle on some ice planet. They are battered, their core temperature is dropping, and their sympathetic nervous system is just maxed out.
Okay, setting the scene.
What do? They climb into a high-tech glowing regeneration pod. The pod closes around them. Now, the pod itself doesn't heal them. It provides an absolute thermal boundary to stop the heat loss.
Right.
And once the heat is trapped, the pod bathes them in cellular repair energy.
That is a fantastic visualization. That's exactly it.
But how does the thermal boundary specifically interact with the acoustics in the cat's case? Why does the bathrobe matter so much to the purr?
Because generating a 25 hertz vibration requires a lot of muscular energy.
Yeah.
The cat is rapidly twitching its laryngeal muscles to make that sound.
Right.
If the wet kitten is exposed to the open air, it is suffering from evaporative cooling. His body has to expend massive amounts of energy just trying to shiver and stay warm.
Oh, and you can't shiver and purr at the same time.
Exactly. If it's shivering, it cannot efficiently maintain the strict muscular rhythm required for a perfect 25 hertz purr.
The muscles are too busy spasming.
Right. So the duck motif bathrobe, the heavy towel, it acts as the regeneration pod. It provides the thermal boundary, trapping the heat.
And with thermal stability achieved, the cat no longer has to shiver.
Yes. It can divert all that saved energy into firing up the 25 hertz sub-bass cellular repair matrix.
That is incredible. The wet kitten isn't just resting. She is actively operating a physiological recovery matrix to counteract the autonomic stress of the bath. And the duck robe is the hardware enabling it.
Exactly. So we now have all these intricate scientific building blocks. We have the unsupervised clustering of the 4 vocal categories. We understand human perception limits and pitch contours.
We know how a high-roughness shriek hacks the auditory nerve fibers through broadband noise.
And we understand the bone-healing biophysics of the 25 hertz purr.
Which means we are finally ready to translate the pop song.
Yeah.
We are going to take these raw biological materials and apply them directly to the narrative of the wet kitty.
This is where it all comes together.
The AI and the logic unit built a precise 6-stage biological arc to translate the poetry into hard science. They call it the 6-stage Catonese FSAI life cycle.
FSAI stands for Fluid Structure Acoustics Interaction, which we will definitely dissect heavily when we get to the physics simulation.
But yes, the 6-stage arc is the core of the translation. It tracks the cat's journey from maximum stress back to total homeostasis.
Let's dedicate some real time to this because this is the climax of the project.
Let's do it. Stage 1 is the water shock. This corresponds to the opening lyrics of the song, all wet from her bath. What is the Catonese reality at this exact second?
At stage 1, we are looking at pure sympathetic panic.
Total fight or flight.
Yes. The acoustic profile is classified as a hiss or a shriek. Structurally, we see a violently falling F0 contour. The roughness index is at its maximum, creating a jagged, intensely dissonant sound wave.
And the nervous system.
The cat's parasympathetic tone activity, the PTAI, has plummeted well below 50.
And what was the phonetic token the AI actually generated for this? Because they couldn't use human words.
The token generated is shri. It is mathematically optimized to force those low spontaneous rate nerve fibers to fire right through the ambient noise of the splashing bathwater.
The absolute survival mode. But the bath ends, and we move to stage 2. Tub isolation and shivering.
The song lyrics focus on her being cold here, talking about a cold little toes.
What happens to the vocalization in stage 2?
The acute shock is over, but the thermal stress really begins. The vocalization shifts from a shriek to a caterwaul.
Okay, so it changes.
Yeah, the fundamental frequency, the F0, becomes highly unstable. We see rapid amplitude variation and high volatility in the sound wave.
And that acoustic instability maps perfectly to the physical act of shivering, right?
Exactly. The laryngeal muscles are literally spasming from the cold, making a clean tone physically impossible.
Then we hit the major turning point. Stage 3, the duck bathrobe wrapper. The human finally wraps the towel around the cat.
This is the physiological pivot point of the entire narrative. The heavy towel is applied. Evaporative cooling is instantly halted.
The pod is sealed.
Yes. Because of this, we see a massive, rapid shift toward parasympathetic calm. The PTI index rises back above 50.
The chaotic caterwaul stops.
And the vocalization becomes a meow with a rising F0 contour.
A rising melody, which goes right back to the Maine Coon study we talked about. The human listeners perceived rising pitch contours as positive or expectant, like when the cats were being brushed.
Exactly. The AI recognizes that this is a moment of positive anticipation, the initiation of drying and warmth. And the acoustic token generated here is per quaquinyan.
I have to highlight that they kept the crack in the phonetic token just to map the duck bathrobe motif from the pop song.
It's a great little detail.
Even though earlier they strictly argued that cats do not quack, it's a nice nod to the original meme.
It is a moment of levity from the AI, but structurally, the token represents a shift toward the purr and a clean meow.
Which brings us to stage 4, majestic pom-pom hood posing.
The lyrics here say, she doesn't do much other than pose.
So the towel is twisted, the pom-pom is on top, she is just sitting there looking majestic. What is happening biologically?
This stage represents apex stance. The cat has achieved zero motor agitation. She doesn't need to move, she just needs to retain heat.
So she's perfectly still.
Right. The vocalization here is a pure modal meow, perfectly phase-locked at that 1 kilohertz sweet spot we discussed earlier.
Because there's no background noise to pierce anymore.
Exactly. The sound represents absolute territorial confidence and security within the bathrobe enclosure. She is broadcasting a low-energy, high-fidelity signal.
She is completely ruling the bathroom right now, which allows her to transition into stage 5, the healing matrix.
The cat settles into a loaf position. Vocalization via the vocal cords completely ceases, and she drops entirely into the sub-bass purr deployment.
The regeneration pod powers up.
Yes. We see the sustained firing of those A1 tonic cells in the auditory cortex. The 25 Hz and 50 Hz muscular frequencies are activated, beginning the physical work of repairing any cellular stress caused by the cold shock and the adrenaline spike.
And finally, stage 6, the cozy, sleepy outro.
By stage 6, thermal equilibrium is fully achieved. The cat is warm and dry. The high-energy repair frequencies are simply no longer needed.
So the purr changes.
The acoustic contours slowly fade out, settling into a soft baseline resting purr as the cat drifts into REM dormancy. Total parasympathetic homeostasis.
It is just a stunning piece of translation. That 6-stage arc perfectly maps the physiological journey from sympathetic fight-or-flight panic right back to rest and digest recovery.
It really does.
It takes a silly anthropomorphic poem and turns it into a rigorous biological documentary.
But, knowing these biological realities isn't the same as recreating them.
Right.
The story in our sources doesn't end with just a theoretical translation. If this AI wanted to truly speak Catonese, it couldn't just write down a phonetic dictionary.
It had to physically simulate how sound moves through a wet feline vocal tract.
And this is where the technological escalation gets genuinely intimidating. They start mapping Catonese into a 128-dimensional latent space.
Okay, I need you to explain this to me as clearly as possible, because when I read 128-dimensional audio feature vectors, my brain just hit a brick wall.
Let's break it down. In advanced machine learning, specifically in models like Google's BGGISH, which is designed to process and categorize audio, you don't just feed the computer a sound wave and say, listen.
Right, computers need numbers.
The computer needs math. So it chops the audio up into tiny slices, in this case 1-second windows. It then translates every conceivable aspect of that 1 second of sound into a massive coordinate system.
Okay, so imagine a map. But instead of just north, south, east, and west, this map has 128 different directions.
Perfect analogy. One dimension on that map might measure how breathy a sound is. Another dimension measures the pitch. Another measures how quickly the volume changes. Another measures echo.
It captures all these nuanced details.
It captures incredibly complex acoustic metrics, like spectral flux and log-Mel spectrogram dynamics. Every 1-second slice of audio gets a specific coordinate, a 128-dimensional vector, pinpointing its exact location on this massive map.
And they linked this map to the audio set ontology. What is that?
AudioSet is a massive standardized library of sounds maintained by Google. In AudioSet, feline sounds are categorized into strict recognizable classes: meow, purr, hiss, caterwaul, and growl.
So the researchers mapped the 128-dimensional space onto these established categories?
Yes.
So they took the 6 stages of the wet kitty and they tracked how the cat's physical state moves through this mathematical space over the 7.5 seconds of the pop song.
Yes. They mapped the geometric trajectory of the cat's voice in the latent space. At time 0, the shock cluster in the bathtub, the vector is firing wildly in the dimensions linked to high-frequency broadband noise and distress. It sits squarely in the hiss and growl ontology.
Because it's panicking.
But as the 7.5 seconds progress, as the bathrobe is applied and the purr begins, you can mathematically track the vector moving across the map. It converges.
He calms down.
It moves away from the chaotic dispersion of the shock and stabilizes into a tight, rhythmic, low-frequency manifold.
The healing trajectory. You can literally watch the act of biological healing happen on a graph.
Precisely. The vector stabilizes into the repeating sub-base signature that the machine learning classifier mathematically recognizes as a continuous feline purr.
That is an incredible use of AI. But wait,
Ah,
we have to talk about the Navier-Stokes FSAI fluid dynamics simulator.
oh, this is the wildest part.
Because tracking a vector on a map is one thing, but aren't we missing a massive physical variable here? The cat is wet.
That is exactly the realization the researchers had. To truly model the wet kitty state, they couldn't just use a recording of a normal dry meow and map it to the trajectory.
Why not?
Because wet fur fundamentally changes the physics of sound production. Wet fur has high surface tension. It clumps together and creates literal physical resistance.
So they built a fluid dynamics simulator to physically choke the sound wave.
They did. They utilized the Navier-Stokes equations.
What are those?
These are the fundamental, highly complex formulas in physics that describe the motion of viscous fluid substances, like how water flows or how honey drips.
How on earth do you apply fluid mechanics to a cat's meow?
Imagine trying to yell through a thick, soaking wet wool blanket.
Okay, it would sound terrible.
Right. The water molecules in the blanket physically trap the high-frequency sound waves. The crispness and clarity of your yell just gets absorbed. The water eats that acoustic energy, so only the low, muffled bass notes manage to push their way through to the other side.
And the Navier-Stokes equation mathematically recreated that wet wool blanket around the cat's vocal tract.
Yes, they modeled a dynamic viscosity coefficient, which is denoted by the Greek letter eta, and they bounded it strictly between 0.7 and 0.95.
Meaning what?
This mathematical constraint represented the literal physical drag of the water on the acoustic wave. The result is what they termed viscous damped Catonese.
Viscous damped Catonese. What does that actually sound like to the ear?
Well, the fluid drag causes the spectral centroid, which you can think of as the center of mass for a sound, to be heavily attenuated. It is dragged down below 350 Hz.
So it's very low.
The high-frequency crispness is utterly destroyed by the simulated water, resulting in a muffled, sputtering, low-velocity noise burst overlaid on a sub-bass carrier wave.
I actually have the phonetic spelling they outputted for this damp sound right here. It is roar, blub, r.
Literal sputter.
It is a mathematically flawless acoustic simulation of a soggy cat trying to complain with a mouthful of wet fur. The level of over-engineering required to achieve this is just spectacular.
It is a triumph of simulation, truly. But this intense godlike ability to simulate physics actually led to a massive philosophical clash between the AI agent and the human logic unit.
Because the technology was so advanced that it forced them to question what translation actually means.
And that brings us to the final act of the source documents, the linguistic reckoning.
Because, look, when you give an AI a wildly advanced fluid dynamic acoustic simulator, it's going to try to have a little fun with it.
It did. The AI initially attempted to be whimsical. As we noted earlier, it generated tokens like meow quack to honor the duck bathrobe,
Right.
but it went much further than that. From a scientific standpoint, it committed a cardinal sin. It attempted to map Catonese using human Cantonese linguistic structures.
Wait, like actual tonal grammar?
Yes, Cantonese is a tonal language, where the meaning of a word changes based on the pitch contour, like a high-rising tone or low-check tone.
And the AI tried to apply this human syntax to the cat's sounds.
It tried to force the purrs and hisses into a grammatical structure that a human would recognize as language.
It tried to put human language into a cat costume.
Exactly. It was prioritizing a neat narrative over biological reality, and the human operator, the logic unit, had to issue a strict fundamental correction.
What did they say?
The human argued that true Catonese cannot use storytelling filler. It cannot use fictional language features. And crucially, it cannot rely on human assumptions of distress.
This was a huge point of contention in the logs. The AI assumed that because the cat was wrapped tightly in a towel, it was trapped, and therefore it must be stressed. It wanted to output distress signals.
Right.
But wait, aren't we just doing the exact same thing we're criticizing? I mean, we're taking a cat sitting in a robe and assigning this high-tech healing matrix concept to it. Isn't that just a different sci-fi flavor of anthropomorphism?
That is a very valid question.
How do we know the math isn't just a fancy form of projecting what we want to see?
That is the critical danger here, and it is exactly why the human operator intervened so aggressively. The human pointed out the ethological reality. A cat resting in a warm bathrobe, maintaining a low profile, is not a cat in distress.
It is in what behaviorists call a sphinx loaf posture.
Exactly. It is deliberately conserving energy, actively managing its thermal recovery and achieving peak parasympathetic contentment. The AI's assumption of distress was a pure human projection.
The human forced the AI to strip away the anthropomorphism completely.
Yes, the philosophy of Catonese became strict. If you want to translate for an animal, you must meet the animal entirely on its own biological, thermodynamic, and neurological terms. You cannot force them to speak your language.
So how did they technologically enforce this philosophy? How did they prevent the AI from slipping back into cartoon physics?
They implemented a system the sources call the FENGEN,
Fengen.
the feline bioacoustic engine, and they governed this engine using a rigid mathematical constraint called the Aruka framework.
Aruka, which was the literal file name of the meme image that started this whole thing. Aruka _ kitty.jpg. They named the safety protocol after the kitten.
A fitting tribute, I think. The Aruka operator is a strict, deterministic articulatory to acoustic feature transformation.
Okay, plain English, please.
It operates as a binary constraint function. If the AI system attempts to generate an unsafe or anomalous pattern, like trying to map human speech tones, or trying to generate a fictional word like quack, or producing an unbiological frequency that a cat physically couldn't make, the Aruka operator violently rejects it.
It bounces it back.
It forces the output back into what they call the feline safe manifold. It ensures that every single translation, every single generated audio vector is 100% biologically plausible, thermodynamically accurate, and perfectly aligned with the audio set ontology.
It's an AI safety rail, but specifically designed to prevent the AI from turning real animals into cartoon characters. It enforces absolute mathematical bioempathy.
It acts as a profound statement on the nature of translation itself. The project asks a central question. Are we trying to make the animals speak like us, simply to satisfy our own narrative desires and egos? Or are we willing to do the incredibly hard math, the fluid dynamics, and the neuroscience to actually learn how to speak like them?
Wow. Let's just take a breath and bring this all full circle. What started as a fun, bouncy jingle about a wet kitty in a duck motif bathrobe mutated into an absolute masterclass in interspecies biology.
It really did.
We've explored the domestic cat vocal repertoire through unsupervised clustering. We've confronted the embarrassing limits of human perception with the Maine Coon dataset. We've decoded how a high roughness shriek hacks the mammalian auditory nerve. And we've mapped the 25 hertz bone-healing frequencies of the purr.
And we watched an AI use Navier-Stokes fluid dynamic simulations to mathematically model a wet wool blanket over a vocal cord, all governed by the Aruka framework to ensure absolute biological truth. It is a staggering synthesis of disciplines.
It really is, and the most important takeaway for you, the listener, is this. The next time you lock your cat out of the bedroom and they whine at the door, or the next time you see them sitting completely still in a loaf position on the rug, or you hear a sharp, raspy meow versus a low, rumbling purr,
You are not just seeing a pet being cute.
you are witnessing a highly evolved, neurologically targeted biophysical language. They are broadcasting specific, survival-optimized data directly at your nervous system.
They're speaking Catonese. You just haven't been doing the math required to understand them.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply provocative concept to ponder. Our sources show that because of this project, we now possess the computational math.
We have the Aruka framework. We have the fluid dynamics.
We have the exact parameters to perfectly simulate a 128-dimensional Catonese vocalization. We have the exact recipe for a 1 kilohertz phase-locked, 25 hertz sub-bass greeting of ultimate parasympathetic contentment.
We can synthesize it perfectly without a single biological flaw.
So think about this. If we take this Fengen pipeline, hook it up to a high-fidelity speaker in our living room, and we broadcast a mathematically flawless, perfectly accented Catonese greeting back to our pets, what will they think of us?
It's a fascinating question.
Will they look at us in shock, thinking the giant hairless ape has finally, miraculously learned to speak their language? Or will they instantly know it's fake? Will they just hear a cold machine wearing a cat costume, trying to trick them? Something for you to ponder the next time you meow back at your cat and they just stare at you. Thanks for